fancy.
You are. I see that.
You saw that. I'm fancy now. I've been working on my opening, you know? All right. So it's another Tuesday evening. Tribe Talking on a Tuesday with Maryam. I have actually been doing this every Tuesday.
Wow.
Like, it's a thing. I'm committed now.
Consistency is key.
Consistency is key. Yes. So another Tribe Talking on a Tuesday with Maryam, and today my guest is Mr. William Snowden, or Will Snowden. We start the show the same way every time. We ask you to give us a very succinct 30-second commercial about who you are, what you do, where you do it, that type of thing.
All right.
So the floor is yours.
I am the proud son of Billy Ray and Kay Snowden, who were not only public school teachers in Milwaukee, but they taught me why speaking up and speaking out is important. I played the cello. I enjoy dancing, but I'm not that good at it. And before my criminal justice work with the Vera Institute of Justice, I was a public defender in New Orleans for 5 years. And that's where I started the Juror Project, which is my passion project, trying to encourage folks in community to realize the power that they have access to through the jury box, and really thinking about how you don't have to be a lawyer, you don't have to be a judge, you don't have to be a state representative to bring about fairness to the criminal legal system. When you get that jury summons, that's actually a ticket and an opportunity to flex some power that sometimes we just don't know we have.
Nice. I like it. I feel like that was a pretty good job. Did you practice?
No, but I have to talk about myself all the time, so it comes kind of easy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, because you're kind of like a OG in these streets right now, right? Like, to be so young, you're all over the place right now. And yeah,
I'm trying to make the rounds.
Humility. No, I'm just kidding. But it's real. I know when we met, and hello, people, as you come in, as you go. But when Will was one of the first people I spoke to before I moved to New Orleans. I have a project that I was working on, still am working on, will probably be working on for a while, that I needed to interview people who are doing community-centered work, especially around incarceration and in the justice system. And he said yes, without even like giving me a hard time, didn't ask me too many questions, was just like, sounds dope, let's see. And then like ever since then, I've just been ping, ping, ping. Every time I turn around, it's like Juror Project, Juror Project, Juror Project, Will Snowden, Will Snowden, Will Snowden. I think that that's exactly how life is supposed to be for you.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So tell me a little bit about what it was like working in the public defender's office in New Orleans.
Yeah, so I chose to be a public defender in New Orleans because Louisiana is the prison capital of the world. Simply put, we're locking up too many Black people. And I wanted to be a public defender that was trying to help change that. So being a public defender in New Orleans, where a majority of the people that you have the privilege of representing are Black people, there's a type of secondary trauma that I don't think we talk about enough. But it was a huge privilege to kind of stand next to people and fight for them in a unique way when sometimes they would be the most unpopular person in that courtroom. But I think about how I love the art, the performative theater nature of like going to trial. I absolutely loved being a trial lawyer. I miss the courtroom. I miss getting to know people outside of just something that they're accused of doing. And I have to be, very honest. I wasn't the type of public defender that believed majority of the people that I represented were innocent. I didn't have any problem with them being quote unquote factually guilty, because public defense is about defending the person, not the crime. And the people that we're assigned to as public defenders are people who can't afford representation. And so just because you don't have enough money doesn't mean you don't deserve a quality representation and a quality lawyer.
Now, break that down. You said defending a person is not about, it's defending the person, not defending the crime. What is that? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I think I've come to that conclusion most frequently when I'd have conversations with folks saying, hey, I'm a public defender. And they'd say, well, how can you defend that murderer, right? How can you defend that rapist? And we think about Bryan Stevenson and what he shares with us in this notion that we are so much more as human beings, we're so much more than the worst thing that we've ever done.
Right.
And, I have this unbridled faith in the good of humanity to understand that, yes, this person may have killed somebody. Yes, this person may have committed a rape against somebody, but that is not who they are wholly as a person. And so when I defend the person, my role as a public defender was to represent that person and giving them the representation, not to condone the crime that they may or may not have committed, not to justify what they may or may not have done, but to fight for that person, not to fight for the commission of that crime.
Right. Because you're not in that role. You're not the jury. You're not the, yeah. That makes perfect sense.
I mean, it's tough. Public defense is honorable work. It is difficult work. But when we think about what people deserve, we have to understand that if our system doesn't work for the innocent, it won't work for the guilty. And so the value of having a public defender to really ensure that due process is happening, to ensure people's rights are being exercised as they've been designed, is really an integral part of the system.
Yeah. So now, this is your work as a public defender is what segued you into starting the Juror Project, right? So can you give us a bit of what that transition was like when you had what?
Yeah. So
I'm doing this.
I was a baby public defender. I was going to trial representing somebody charged with, I think, 2 crack rocks and 3 pills that they didn't have a prescription for. And when we were doing the voir dire process, which is the jury selection, I remember this older Black man saying, I can't vote guilty for your guy because it sounds like he has a drug problem and he doesn't belong in prison. So from my perspective, I'm like, damn, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's the type of person I want on my jury.
Yeah.
And then another person said a similar thing, I can't, vote to convict the person you're representing because I think he has a health problem, not a crime problem. And then I saw this evolution of people sharing their perspective of how the criminal legal system should not be imprisoning people with substance use issues. But then what was also simultaneously happening is the prosecutor was removing all those people from the jury. So when we think about this notion of the Sixth Amendment right, saying you have a right to a jury of your peers, what that means from my perspective is that a person has a right to have a peer on their jury who does not believe in incarcerating people with substance use disorders, just as much as they have a right to have somebody on their jury that does believe in putting people in prison for substance use disorders. But the way the system is designed, it's removing certain perspectives. It's removing certain ideologies. It's removing certain experiences. So as I was going to trial, as I was watching other people going to trial, I began to recognize the systemic ways in which primarily Black and brown folks were being removed from the jury box, which then was removing them from having access to power, which was then removing them from having the opportunity to be part of that conversation of deciding who we should be convicting and who we should not be convicting. So as I'm in this position as a public defender and seeing this pattern of discriminatory practices and jury discrimination, I realized that in order for me to actually be an effective lawyer, I have to take my advocacy outside the courtroom and take it to the community to have conversations about jury service. And I began to notice that there were 4 main things that were contributing to the lack of diversity on our juries. The first was the way that we summon jurors. So when we use voter registration and DMV records, at least in New Orleans, we're excluding about 35% of people who otherwise would be eligible to sit on a jury. But because they don't own a car, because they're not registered to vote, they don't get summoned. The second contributing factor is the voir dire process. So that question and answer period where lawyers are asking potential jurors questions. And historically, the New Orleans DA's office, when I was a public defender, would ask this question: how many of us have had a bad experience with the New Orleans Police Department? Inevitably, the Black folks would talk about the bad experience and then they would get kicked off. The third contributing factor was felony disenfranchisement. So up until this year, people with felony convictions could not serve on a jury. But I'm very excited to share that I was part of the efforts passing the legislation to restore jury rights to people with felony convictions. So now we can take that bucket off the list. The fourth kind of contributing factor is community mindset, right? We all know people who have received a jury summons in the mail and thought, damn, how do I get out of jury duty? They go to their computer and they Google, how do I get out of jury service?
Yeah.
So what the Juror Project tries to focus on is changing people's perspective and changing people's reactions to jury service to actually realize this is an opportunity to do some good, to add some fairness to the criminal legal system and potentially impact a person's life who might be accused of a very serious offense.
So I have two things to say. One, I've never been called to jury duty.
Yeah, that's probably.
And I think maybe I'm too eager. It's like I'm sitting there like, call me. I'm gonna do it. I think they're like, no, not her. Like they don't even send me the summons. But when you're talking about this, how do you address people who are like, my job doesn't give me time off for jury duty.
Yeah.
So how am I supposed to do this? Be a good civil servant or, productive citizen in this way. And I'm gonna be losing money.
Right. I think that's a very valid concern. And I don't think the answer is increasing jury pay, right? Because you only get paid as a juror if you actually sit on a trial. But if you're going to court and you're in the...
Oh, wait, hold on, pause. You get paid to be a juror?
Yeah. I mean, it's peanuts, but technically you get paid.
Did y'all know that? Did y'all know you get paid to be a juror? I thought it was like a volunteer service that you do for...
No, I mean, you get compensated. And I don't know what the rate is, but it's probably, not as much as you would get if you stayed working at your job. And so that's the tension, is like people don't get time off from their employment to go sit on a jury. And so they will share in the voir dire process saying, I can't be here because I have to work or whatever it might be. So I think the solution to that is we need to, at least in New Orleans, we've had conversations with the New Orleans Business Alliance to figure out what types of policies organizations should be having to provide leave for employees that get called for jury service. So they don't have to take vacation time, they don't have to take sick time. It is actually a compensated benefit. If somebody gets called for jury service, they're still able to get paid for that time that they're actually at the courthouse. But on the other side, I think the system is trying to increase jury pay, but that only applies to people who actually get selected to sit on the jury, to sit for the trial, not for people who are just showing up and just waiting to be called.
So, I mean, I guess that goes right back to like equity issues, right? Like, poor people are going to say, how am I going to get my money back? Because Bianca just said she got paid $10 a day.
Okay.
So, like, if you've got 3 children at home, but you're invested in the process. Now, my thing is, I'm not saying this to deter anyone. I want you all on the juries, right? I remember there was a grown woman that I was talking to, and she got called in for grand jury. And she's an activist, like a big time activist. And her thing was, if I'm in here, they're asking for a certain amount of time. And it was like it was a commitment.
Like 3 months or something. Probably.
Yeah, it was a commitment. And she was like, I do better work on the street. And in my mind, I was thinking, ooh, if you were in the grand jury, if they would allow it, right? Like, that's what you want. Yeah. So I'm wondering, so I say that to say, like, I know you work with changing the mindset of just kind of everyday community members, right? But what about those who have a big voice, who are, I'm going to say, unknowingly speaking against the jury process because of how they feel they fit in?
Yeah, I think the big voice is always the voice that is needed in the jury deliberation room. And when attorneys are actually doing voir dire, when they're asking questions, one, they're looking for people who probably just aren't a good fit for the case, but two, they're also looking for who's going to be leading the conversation in that deliberation room. And so people who have a big voice about justice issues are the exact type of people we need in the deliberation room to be fostering a more kind of objective conversation where we have longer deliberations, where more questions are going to be asked. But as people are positioning themselves and talking not necessarily negatively about jury service, but just saying it's not a lane or an opportunity for me to be part of reforming the criminal legal system, I can't tell you how much that hurts the individual person who's going to trial. And we think about how people their faith has eroded in our jury system because of this practice of getting out of jury service, and I think there's such an opportunity for a power grab for more folks to be involved in jury service, and even the concept of jury nullification, which for some folks is a taboo conversation to have.
Mm-hmm.
But jury nullification is a constitutional premise where it says you can be on a jury and somebody can be factually guilty of possessing marijuana or cannabis because that's what the law says. But you as a juror can vote not guilty, even though that person is quote unquote factually guilty, but you vote not guilty as a check on the government from abusing its power because you as a community don't believe somebody should be sanctioned for that type of behavior. And so when people...
Wait, okay, so pause. Did y'all hear that? Do y'all understand what he's saying? So, because I don't think that is how it is presented when you're learning about the process.
Right.
Like, the way that it was presented to me was like, if you're on a jury and the facts are that this person did the crime, you have to say they're guilty because they've proven that they did this crime, right?
Yeah.
But you're saying the jury can kind of set the precedent here. Like, we don't actually believe someone should have to do time for this thing. Is that what you're saying? Kind of? Well, fix it for me.
So I mean, the classic example of jury nullification is the acquittal of the white men who killed Emmett Till. Mm-hmm. There was no question that those men killed Emmett Till. Mm-hmm. But that all-white jury, their perspective, they didn't think that those white men should be convicted for killing Emmett Till. So this idea of jury nullification...
Oh, I get what you're saying. Okay.
Time and time again. What I'm saying is we can use it as a force for good, right? If we do not believe that people that use substances or are charged with simple possession of drugs, if we don't believe that those people should be convicted, you can get on a jury and you can vote not guilty. Now, in Louisiana, lawyers are prohibited from talking about jury nullification during the trial. So that's why we have to have these conversations in the community so that we know how to access this power that has been given to us. And jury nullification isn't the main thing that the Juror Project advocates for. Mm-hmm. We actually advocate for increasing diversity of our jury panels and improving people's perspective of jury duty, because the research is abundantly clear that when we have more diversity, we have more fairness in our criminal legal system. And that's what we all should want. We talk about jury nullification because it's not going to be talked about in the courtroom. So we believe it is something that people should be aware of as part of being able to exercise their power. And it's also this constitutional check on the government from not trying to convict people or to prevent the government from convicting people for things that the community really doesn't think people should be convicted for.
Right. Now, I didn't follow the Chauvin trial, right? One, because I just did not want to be more emotionally invested in what was going on than I already was. Save yourself as much as you can. But I did follow you. And if you all don't follow Will already, the Juror Project, TheJurorProject, on Instagram. And also the jurorproject.org online is his website. Will did like a series breaking down like what was going on during the trial in regards to, what were you trying to get us to see with that? Like, what was, aside from just us knowing you're an expert in this, what was it that you wanted us to learn from that?
One is the power. I was trying to create this preface of the power of the jury, right? Mm-hmm. There have been cases where the court of public opinion, everyone had already come to an understanding of what the verdict should be in other cases. But for example, the George Zimmerman trial, everybody, well, not say everybody, but a lot of people had the opinion that Zimmerman should have been convicted, right? Mm-hmm. What I was trying to front load with the Chauvin trial was the importance of that jury selection process. You never know when you get it. Now, maybe the folks in Minneapolis and Hennepin County knew, but you never know what type of trial you're going to get called for, right? Mm-hmm. But when those people were being summoned around that time, I think folks knew that the Chauvin trial was coming up. But one of the things that I was highlighting was the demographics of the jury and the demographics of the alternates, but also comparing the demographics of the jury to the demographics of Hennepin County, which encompasses Minneapolis, to understand that when our Constitution says you have a jury of your peers, that's supposed to mean something.
Yeah.
So the jury really should be reflecting the demographics of the community. But when we have practices in play that are removing certain people from that jury box, we have to be critical of the system that allows that. So what I was front loading was information about who had been summoned for jury service, what the original kind of panel was looking like, and then after the jury selection, day after day after day, how we came to have these 12 people and the 2 alternates to be the deciding factors to sit on that jury, so that when it does come to the verdict, we can compare that outcome to other outcomes where law enforcement has not been held accountable, right? And what we're seeing in this trend of cases where law enforcement is being charged for killing of unarmed Black people and Black and brown people is that when that jury is more diverse, there actually is a sense of accountability. The other example is the Amber Geiger case out of Dallas. She's the police officer that killed Botham Jean in his apartment when she thought she was going into her apartment. Now that was a diverse jury, and that led to a conviction of that police officer. So what we're seeing is that when you have this diverse jury that's reflective of the communities in which they're coming from, you're getting different outcomes in the cases that you don't normally see when the jury is more of a homogenous or all of the same group.
That was a lot. I think this is hard.
Yeah.
Harder than when you talk about juries and jury duty and all that stuff in everyday conversation, it seems very short, like very straightforward, very like, you go, the more Black people on the jury, the better, so on and so forth. But it's almost like chess.
Very much so. You can win or lose your case in jury selection. A lot of trial lawyers will tell you that you can win or lose your case in jury selection. And so it's just so important for us to understand from the very beginning how are we creating the universe from which the jurors are selected, so that can be kind of a microcosm of the community that's going to be sitting on the jury to receive all the information and facts of the case.
But see, I was also told, and I don't know if this is true, but I just remember hearing it more than once, that a lot of young Black and brown folks end up in situations where they're told, like, you don't want to go in front of a jury. You want to just sign this paper, or you want to just go in front of a judge. Mm-hmm. Do you think that that's like, is that as harmful as it feels?
In terms of advising accused young people to not go in front of
a jury? Yeah.
I certainly think it's problematic. But again, this relates to the confidence that people have in our jurors, right? There are so many jokes out there that kind of talk negatively about jury service. Or like, there's one joke that says, would you really want to go to trial in front of a group of people who don't know how to get out of jury service? Right. So there's this idea that only, uneducated.
That's actually kind of funny though.
but that hurts people deciding whether or not to exercise their constitutional right and go to trial. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think there's this stigma to jury service. There's this stigma of going to trial for lack of having faith in the people who will be selected to juries to be on the juries. And that's part of the conversation the Juror Project is trying to facilitate. That we as a community have been given this power, but we've been taught to not seize it, to not access it, to not utilize it for good, that we just kind of callously disregard it. For people in Louisiana, you can volunteer to be on a jury. I gave a presentation at Southern University Law Center a few years ago. When I told them that, they were like, oh, well, we can't be on juries when we're in class because we're trying to focus. We got homework, I got it. But during their winter break, a few of them organized themselves and they went to go volunteer to be on a jury.
So you don't have to be summoned?
You don't have to be summoned. No.
Y'all, you can sign up.
In Louisiana, I don't know.
In Louisiana, we don't know about where you at, but in Louisiana
is when I used to go to trial when I was a public defender. I kept recognizing this older guy. I was like, he must be a volunteer. So I asked. I said, hey, is anybody here a volunteer juror? And he said that he was. And I asked him, why do you volunteer to serve on juries? Like, I loved it, but I was also just curious. And he says, well, it beats sitting at home and watching TV.
That's not why.
So this is like this form of entertainment.
That's not why. That's not good enough.
So,
Bianca says it's hard to get and retain all this knowledge prior to being summoned.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Bianca says it's hard to get and retain all this knowledge prior to being summoned.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of the problem is we don't talk about jury service. We don't talk about the ins and outs. We don't talk about the strategy that is being deployed by the attorneys to remove certain people from the jury. So to meet that kind of lack of education and lack of understanding, the Juror Project has created a jury duty unit plan that is designed for high school civic teachers to teach their kids about jury service. And one of the most popular parts of that unit plan is the actual voir dire exercise, where there will be 4 students, 2 students for each side, that are practicing as the attorneys and the teacher is the judge. And then we create mock profiles for the students to pretend to be different characters on the jury. And what it does is it allows the students to pretend to be lawyers and ask questions, and allows the other students who are the potential jurors to deploy their acting skills to represent the different profiles. But it gives this insight understanding of the strategy behind jury service, so that when they actually graduate and become adults, they have a different perspective of the importance of serving on a jury.
Brandon said, not being better than watching TV. Yes, that's what he said. He's going to sign up to be on the jury.
All right. Well,
Law and Order SVU was playing out. You watched all that episodes.
That's a success.
I love that. So, I know you said that it's a unit for high school teachers. Could it be, something that you design where parents can copy it from your website, because they want to teach it at home to their children and they need guidance?
Absolutely. I don't think there's anything limiting to the unit plan that wouldn't allow parents to be able to use it. I could certainly consider ways in which we structure it a little bit differently for parents to utilize it. But we have the unit plan active in some schools in New Orleans, some schools in Oakland. Mm-hmm. The next site, we're working with the school board in Newark for them to incorporate into their unit plan. So it's definitely something that we're trying to spread as part of our efforts, to Bianca's point, to give more education behind this important civic duty.
Yeah, I would, as a parent, I find there are a lot of things I want to teach my son. And I don't necessarily trust the school system to be as proactive, right, as I would love for them to be in making sure my little one, as he grows, understands his options and things. And so if you ever did make it, something that I could, purchase off your website for $50, then I would buy it. Yeah. Brandon said, I did a thing like that with Georgetown law students. It's an underused opportunity for theater programs. Oh, we did. Brandon, B-Doug, you just reminded me. We did that. If this is what you're talking about, we used to go and do mock court. Mm-hmm. As actors. Our job was to be and we did the same thing with medical students at GW and things like that, where we go and pretend to be patients and, we do this whole thing. Yeah. Do they still do that? Do they still do mock courts? They have to. Mock courts.
Yeah. So I'm a guest faculty member with the National Criminal Defense College. And one of the things that they do for lawyers is they get improv actors, I guess, mm-hmm. That's the term, to come and pretend to be different jurors, to be different witnesses, so that you can practice your cross-examination, but also so you can practice your voir dire skills. And when I did the National Criminal Defense College, when it used to be in Macon, Georgia, they would actually invite volunteer folks from the community to be on the jury, peppered amongst the different different improv folks. And it was really interesting in Macon, Georgia, because the candid racism certainly came out in the mock jury selection, and it was important to experience because that's real world, right? And you got to adapt to those situations as a lawyer conducting the jury selection.
So actors, artists, I just want you to know that you can also participate in making the world a better place by getting these lawyers, these attorneys trained up. And it was good money. If you're trying to get standardized patients and the mock trials. Those were actually really interesting. I had a fun time doing that.
Yeah.
I had a fun time doing that. I know you said you give your favorite part of being a defense attorney was when you got to do your is it called a summation?
Closing arguments, summation.
Your closing arguments.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were like Othello?
I always tell people that being a trial lawyer in front of a jury is like having a blank canvas, and whoever paints the most colorful, vivid picture usually wins the case. And by closing argument, the picture should really already have been drawn for the jury. What you're doing is you're just creating that framework in terms of why they should, vote for what you're advocating for. But I absolutely loved the performative nature of trial, right? The jury is watching every single thing that you do. And I think about growing up as a cello player, trained in the Suzuki method and giving these little concerts and stuff. Just the things that I learned to be a musical performer and how it translates into being a trial lawyer. I never knew that I'd be able to draw upon those musical skills. And I'm talking about the dynamics in your voice. I'm talking about the pregnant pauses. I'm talking about moving with purpose, about showing emotion within a particular framework. All that stuff is really translatable, and we have to understand that as human beings, we make decisions based off emotions. The way that we are able as lawyers to recognize the emotional experience, if there is one that we can tap into, on behalf of the person that you have the privilege of representing, to get that connection with the jury, that is all performative art. And you tailor that skill with your legalese and your legal expertise, and you're bound to make a pretty good trial lawyer.
Do not saw the air too much with your hand thus. Choose all gently. Don't get me started. I'll give you a whole lesson. No. Okay. Look, I have like all these little things bubbling in my head. Like, I want to ask about this. I want to ask about that. But I don't want to stray. I know before we got on here, actually, let me back up. So for those of us, and I'm including myself in that number, even though I have access and relationship with policy and policy language and laws and things like that. But I do know that there's a large demographic of people who exist who are like, I just don't know enough. I just don't know enough. And that is disempowering enough for them to say, I can't do this because I don't understand the language. I don't understand what people are talking about. I don't know enough. I'm not smart enough or whatever. How do we get those folks who are not, who may not have the, I guess, education background, like regular folk who've been told over and over again that they're not smart enough or that, they lack these certain basic skills? How do we get them to feel like if you walk into the room and you're sitting in this seat, when it's all said and done, you will be able to make a decision and it will be what is the right decision for you?
I think people fail to recognize their own expertise sometimes. And too often they try to position their life experience within a box that's defined by a system that was never designed for them in the first place. We all are experts in our own lives and our own experiences and our own desires for fairness, for equity, for justice, for public safety. And no one can take that expertise or perspective away from you. And so what I want to encourage people to do is when you find yourself in a space where you're trying to navigate and you think, oh, I have to be a lawyer to understand this, or I have to be a judge to understand that. These systems are designed to serve people. And you as an everyday person are the expert in terms of how that system is or is not serving you. And I don't care what lawyer tries to take that expertise away from you. When we get back to the core foundation of what these systems are designed for, it's for the people, it's for the community. So never let somebody undervalue or try to make you feel as if you don't have that expertise, particularly in the context of sitting on a jury. Sure, the lawyers will be able to apply the law. The lawyers will be able to understand the different elements of the case that need to be proved. But you as an individual are sitting there making this decision on whether or not has the government made their case, but also is this something that we want to put a community stamp on in terms of behavior that we want to criminalize or behavior that we want to convict somebody for. And as you think about the safety that you want to live under. You think about the community that you want to live within. You think about how the system you want to be designed to serve the community that you are a part of. You making a decision through the lens of your life experiences is one of the most valuable kind of sense of expertise that you can bring to this system.
So in short, like your lived experience is enough, right?
Yeah.
Like you,
Absolutely.
That's a t-shirt. My lived experience is enough. I'm going to do that. I give you guys free t-shirt game like every time on here. I don't know if anybody's capitalized off of any of these t-shirts I've told y'all to make, but just putting out there, I got y'all covered. So one of the primary functions of Try Talking on a Tuesday with Maryam is I want to share your brilliance and let people know all of the wonderful things that you are doing, because as I've said multiple times, I do think that you are just dope.
Thank you.
Dope. And I think the work that you're doing is, I'm glad that it is being platformed in the way that it is. It's very necessary. And I have Googled and searched and tried to find someone who's doing what you do. And that is not, I ain't found them yet. So you're also creating space, which is huge, right? But you're also like a real regular person, like you're a real, and I think that sometimes we forget that because you're trailblazing, because you're, out here advocating, or you're a frontliner, in my opinion, that you do have to create this balance between being William C. Snowden, of the Juror Project, and Will, who plays the cello on Mondays and just got married, and all of that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask you some questions about who you are that has nothing to do with Juror Project, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Also, I just want to say, did y'all hear me say just got married? Can y'all get up on my DMs? Will is not available. And I don't want no problems with Miss V. So, Mrs. I don't want no problems. Okay. So I was like, oh, y'all thirsty. So so first, describe your perfect day off.
Ooh, that's easy. I am on my tandem kayak with my wife, catching redfish and going on what they call a Cajun sleigh ride. So when you hook into a red drum, they're powerful fish, so they'll actually pull the kayak. So I'd say starting off with a very successful fishing trip, and then concluding with cooking that fish and just having friends and family over to enjoy the meal.
Can we hear the story about you getting the tandem kayak?
We'll pass on that one. We don't say that one.
Okay. That's fine. So, all right, my next question. If you could go anywhere in the world and live there for 6 months for free, where would you go?
I think I'd go to the moon. I really love astronomy. And I think about my favorite constellation. It's called Cassiopeia. And the only reason why it's one of my favorite constellations is because it looks like a W. So it's kind of like not really an interesting reason to have a favorite constellation. But I think whenever I get to travel, and in the evening you get to look at the sky and you get to see different stars, I think the perspective that you'd be able to get on the moon, it would just, it certainly would be breathtaking. You certainly would have, you'd be disconnected from a lot of folks and be able to create your own mind space, but to have that influence by just the galaxy and the universe, I think would be just an amazing experience.
I love that your mind went straight to the moon.
Yeah.
Never would have even thought about it. And that sounds really amazing.
Yeah.
I too, now, will go to the moon.
Yeah.
Do you believe Pluto's really a planet? That's not my next question, but I just wanted to ask.
So I don't think I know enough about how a planet is defined to say whether or not Pluto is a planet. But all this stuff is kind of subjective, right? Like if we want it to be a planet, then it's a planet. If we don't want it to be a planet, then it's not. Like we kind of create.
Is that how science works?
Is that what now?
Is that how science works?
No, definitely not. But I mean, you have people saying the Earth is flat. I'm not saying that they're right, but like if we want Pluto to be a planet, then I'm willing to be convinced. I mean, I learned it as a planet. I don't know why it wouldn't be a planet.
I did too.
Yeah. So I think the real thing we should be talking about is the constellation of Ophiuchus, which is throwing a lot of people on who believe in astrology, a lot of people off who believe in astrology. Ophiuchus was this very, the zodiac is created by the 12 different constellations that have been subscribed to the 12-month Julian calendar. But originally there was this constellation called Ophiuchus, which was removed because it was the shortest constellation and they wanted to be able to accurately pair onto the 12 months. But now there's been advocacy to put Ophiuchus back in. So everybody is off and everybody's going crazy.
Yeah, they're trying to say I'm a Pisces.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine that.
Who knows? I just, it's a little fluid.
It's not.
All right.
I'm an Aquarius.
All right.
I don't even, once I started, I love astrology.
Mm-hmm.
I love astrology. I also don't care anything about it, but does that make sense? Like I'm someone who checks my horoscope every day, but I'm also like, if it doesn't line up, it just doesn't line up because whatever,
Yeah.
But there are certain things that I have been learning about the way people respond to who they think they are supposed to be because of their sign.
Oh, really?
That I think is very interesting about like human behavior and like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know what's a stereotype. Oh, like they say Aquarians are lofty and non-committal and all these different things. And I'm not lofty. Non-committal, possibly. Lofty,
not on that spectrum. I'm telling you, Ophiuchus is gonna really.
Ophiuchus is in there. Maybe he's right. All right, next question. How do you define wealth?
Wealth. I think wealth is an abundance of something. I think we can be wealthy in a variety of ways. I think about how my parents are wealthy in the experiences that they have had over next year, the 50 years of their marriage. Like there's a lot of wealth. There's a lot of abundance of knowledge as it relates to just a relationship, as it relates to love, as it relates to race, because I come from a blended background. My dad is Black, my mom is white. And so I would say they are wealthy in the sense of understanding ins and outs of a relationship. So they have the abundance of love. And so I think wealth is defined by the abundance of something.
Are you wealthy?
I think I am. Yeah, I think I have an abundance of like random skills, right? So I think about the summers I spent on a farm. I was a beef cattle farm, and like learning how to drive stick shift on a tractor and learning how to bale hay. And I think about the different types of knots that I learned how to tie for fishing. I think about how I learned how to cut my hair in a decent way, although I should have cut it before today's video. But I think I'm wealthy in the sense that I have this abundance of random skills that I possess.
Good. I was going to say, if you said no, I was going to be like, sir. I also didn't imagine you saying no. All right. Next question. What is your biggest pet peeve?
So I sometimes don't like it when people aren't accurate. So I
feel like the sometimes in that is like, the statement is you don't like.
I just think about how I've gotten into disagreements with people, and when I have pointed something out, and I'm just like, well, there's nothing wrong with being accurate, right? Because they have said something wrong, and I realize how that just comes off like a complete asshole.
Is that a thing you say in those words?
Only with certain people that I have the relationship with, that would like understand that I'm not really coming for them, but that's not really a pet peeve. Let me think more, because that's probably a better pet peeve. Here goes one. I'm
Like,
not
so
crazy.
what was it? Hold on. I gotta put that in the comments. There's nothing wrong with being accurate.
I'm not a fan of people that use the handicap button to open up doors.
Why?
I think there's an energy efficiency thing that bothers me. Like I don't like wasted energy, and so there's a couple of things like first, like that function of the door is designed for people who may not physically be able to open the door themselves. And you're adding unnecessary wear and tear on that function that in the event that somebody who actually needs to use the door, you potentially are lessening the life of that particular function. Then from like anybody who has air conditioning or tries to heat a home, those doors, when they open automatically, they stay open for a while. So you think about all that AC that's going out or all that heat that's going out. It's just like wasted resources. And I just don't understand why, if a person is able-bodied to open the door right now, why they wouldn't be doing that as opposed to having this machine open it up for them. I also, I hate litter. That's a whole other conversation. Oh man, this person.
Keep going now.
Like on my street right now, I'm like in these turf wars with litter, and it's
so bad.
Yeah.
I don't like when people use their feet to push the handicap buttons or elevator buttons and stuff like that. Like if their hands are full, they'll like kick it.
Oh, no,
or like I don't like that because I know that like somebody has to use their hand on it because they have to.
Right.
And I think that that's trifling. I don't want to touch whatever's on the bottom of your, you know what I mean?
Right. But litter, it's funny because this came up with my boys the other day. I was on a morning run. I saw somebody dumping.
I'm sorry. I want you to say what you need to say, but we need to address this really quickly. Someone says, I use my dad's handicap sticker. Is that okay? Is that bad? Yes.
Is that person handicapped? I mean,
no.
I don't like to call people lazy, but why are you using a handicap sticker if you don't need to? And like you're parking in a handicap spot for somebody who actually
would need it.
Yeah.
That person is related to me that we just called out. Keep going. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but I want to hear your story.
It's just fine. And I know some of my friends who are tuning in are laughing because I get called an old man a lot, and
I can see that.
I probably have old man tendencies, but like I can just see like I'm that person like stop throwing trash on my street, you know. But I was on a run. I think it was last week, and I saw this yellow. I think it was a 2003 Ford Ranger pickup truck stop like halfway down my street, and they were taking bags out the truck bed and they're just throwing them on the side. And so in the moment, I was like, okay, what's the best way to respond? Do I call them out? Do I say something to them? And anyway, it's like we had an interaction, but I didn't engage to like elevate it to anything serious. But my whole thing was like, well, how do I respond to this? And so like the first thing I was like, oh, I'm just going to pick up the trash. And actually, I know where this guy lives because when I run a different direction, I've seen that truck before, and I'm just going to return it to him. And then my boys are like, nah, that's not going to work. So then the other thing I came up with is I'm just going to post a sign on the street because I suspect, and my neighbor who has also noticed this truck, I suspect he's been repeatedly dumping trash on our street. So I wanted to put up a sign that says, I drive a yellow Ford Ranger and I dump my trash here because I don't care about the people who live on this block. Now, whether or not that will actually publicly shame him or make him do anything different, I don't know. But the point is, it is just so disrespectful to take your trash and throw it on other people's streets for whatever reason. Yes, in New Orleans, we've been having a trash pickup problem. Like, that's just not okay.
I'll say I'm very proud of my neighbors with this trash pickup problem. I'm not going to say that I thought that they would handle. I don't know what I thought. I don't know what I thought. But the way that they have been attempting to contain and just not make the problem worse.
Right.
I'm very, very grateful for that like community decision, even though we didn't talk about it. Everybody's just kind of doing their thing.
Yeah.
Because I've gone a couple streets over and I'm like, they don't care. It's everywhere, you know? And for those of you who are not here in Louisiana, we are having a sanitation issue with getting, I mean, they're picking up our container trash. Are they getting your container trash?
Yeah. So we're now on a once a week schedule.
Yeah. I
So
don't know
that's
what our day is, so we just keep our trash can out front. But we've been getting it at least once a week. But there's like people's whole houses, like, I mean, bedroom, furniture, anything that got just messed up in the storm that had to be put out. So there's like mold and mildew and all this stuff. My concern is like, now that the schools are back in session, the kids have to be out at these bus stops. So they're like right there beside all of these piles of things. And because the buses are also having issues, almost just like the sanitation workers, they could be out there for an hour, hour and a half, standing next to a pile of trash. And I just think that that's a horrible way to start your morning or end your day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so my concerns when we you have a question in the comments. What do you mean like in general? Because we've already discussed that he's married. You mean like in general? What do you think about the dating scene for men versus women? What is your opinion on dating compromise? I got opinions.
I don't know what dating compromise is.
Me either. I do. What do you mean by dating compromise? So I'm not going to get we don't have to go here, but I will say this. I'm going to answer the question because I don't know if I'm going to put Will on the spot for that, but I'm going to answer the question. I'm going to say, I don't know what dating is like. I just came from a lunch with a friend and we both were on our like online dating apps, like swiping left, like, it was crazy. I think that there is such and I don't think this is just dating. I think this is real life meeting, like everything. It goes from the bullies on Facebook to all of this stuff being so virtual and so packaged and so hidden and so behind the screen. You just never know what is authentic, what is real, what is honest, right? Which is another reason why I love engaging with people like you, Will. I think that your authenticity shows up, right? Immediately in conversation. We know that you're not giving us the bullshit, right? But I will say nowadays, especially, you know what, Chrissy, I don't know if that's a question about dating, but I do think that that's a good question about compromising what you believe to get what you want from someone. I think that's the same thing I was saying, is that like there's a lack of authenticity nowadays. And you don't have to be authentic. You don't have to be genuine because nobody would ever really know. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing like when I've been following like a lot of these like local races, like school board races, things like that, like the local politics, especially here because I'm trying to learn the scene. And there are some people and I'm like staring like, something about this doesn't feel right. Right? And I attribute that to my discernment, right? Like there's a spirit in me that can kind of say like, ooh. But if I did not have that, I would just assume they'd be brilliant and amazing and get all these jobs done. And like, we would be in like a much better position and da-da-da-da-da-da. And so my question to you in relationship to that, like, as someone who works in these sectors, these fields where you're having to constantly be around people who say that they either believe in your mission or support your mission or want to see these things change and want to see these things done too. They want the justice system to be reformed. They want, equity for people. They want this and that. How do you know when these people are legit? Like, how do you know when that this is an alliance you need, or that they might just be saying whatever they want to say to get behind your name?
Yeah.
Or,
I think sometimes you have to analyze what prompted the initial kind of outreach, if there was an outreach. And I think in the work that I do, a lot of it is coalition building. We know that reforming the criminal legal system is a collaborative process. And so you evaluate your partners not just on like the thing of the moment that you might be working on, but also like what have they worked on in the past before this potential partnership is going to be forged. And also, you have to be, just plugged into the political gamesmanship that happens a lot around election time, right? And I have taken advantage of that where I know, hey, this particular elected official wants to appear to be doing X, Y, and Z. This is something that I'm trying to get past. Now's the best time to get them to do it. So there's like that short-term work, but there's also that long-term work. And this work is about relationships. And if you're only reaching out because you're trying to appear to know about criminal justice reform, you're trying to get elected, I know why you're reaching out. But if you're reaching out like in a non-election cycle, or that, let's say you're another partner organization that's working on an issue and you want to bring in, whatever area of expertise I might have or an organization that I'm working for has, and we're trying to build something together and we have agency in designing what that thing is, all of these ways in which we would determine if somebody is authentic when we're sitting down and having coffee with them on a first date is the same type of things that you're going to be plugging into when you're engaging a potential new work partner and engaging their authenticity and what is their end goal, what is their agenda.
How do you respond when or have you ever been in a situation where you found out, you end up disappointed, that the person doesn't do what they said that they were going to do, and you've participated in uplifting them or whatever? Like, how do you handle those situations?
This work has a lot of disappointment. I have had good friendships with people who've been elected to office, and they've gotten a call to vote a particular way because of some political relationship they have. And they know that I'm coming in front of the Capitol the next day, and they give me a call ahead of time saying, hey, Will, just let you know I'm voting this way because of X, Y, and Z. I know you're not going to be happy with it. That type of a heads up I appreciate more, because the game of politics is definitely a game of chess. And so I understand how people need to navigate in those particular ways sometimes. But when I found out that somebody has tried to either use our work or use our advocacy or use our information, and then has either voted contrary to something that we were working on or has really sidelined a particular initiative or agenda that we've been trying to advance, I will follow up with them and try to understand where was the disagreement or where was the disconnect? Like, how did we get so close to this particular thing and then you go completely left? To ask interrogating questions to understand what the problem was. And
do you find that people are receptive to that?
If they answer my call and they have a conversation, they still get to maintain some credit with me. But there has been times where I've been at the state capitol, I've been chewed out by a representative, and I try to reach out to them and say, hey, there was some disagreement and misunderstanding of what data I was actually representing. Can we talk about this? And then crickets, like no response. And it's that lack of response, that lack of willingness to disagree in a respectful, professional way that really rubs me the wrong way. Like, we're building relationships in this work. And I also understand that I will not work with everybody on every single thing. And that's perfectly okay, right? I understand that there are issues that I can be working on where I'm going to be partnering with certain people. And there's issues that I'll be working on that I'm going to be opposing people that I've previously partnered with. And I think the intersectionality of our work is important to name and recognize, because we all don't have the same goals. We all don't have the same kind of mission in our work. When it aligns, it's beautiful. When it isn't in alignment, that doesn't mean we can't partner in other areas. But I think the ways that we navigate those opportunities where we might be on the other sides of issues is really informative of how we can potentially partner together ever again.
Yeah. Yes, there's a question. Do you think majority of people follow the political party their family supports? If so, is it hard to convince them to learn the agenda of politics on their own? I think politics is like, when you're talking about family, you can disagree with me or you can agree, something I would love to hear your thoughts. But I feel like one of the things, we didn't really discuss politics in my house. I think we were, we knew we were Democrats.
Right.
And that was kind of it. But there was no like intro to politics. This is what this means conversation. But I think it's just like religion. Like, if you're born into a Muslim house, you're normally Muslim. If you're born into a Christian house, you're normally Christian. It takes kind of like growing up, seeing the world, existing in the world, and learning things separately or independently of those people that rear you before you can make a decision on what you believe for yourself. I mean, that's
and I think with family, there's an element of never wanting to disappoint your parents, at least in some instances. And I've had disagreements with my mom about my appreciation for religion, but depending on your family, sometimes you can disagree and learn from your parents and the times in which they grew up in and why they have certain practices or values that they have and how that can be different from you. It can be challenging though, because with family, I think there's always this assumption of sameness and likeness because we all kind of come from the same family institution, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And when we divert from that, it can feel like we're diverting from our family.
Yeah.
And that can be difficult to do. But I think about, when my sisters have disagreed with my parents, when I have disagreed with my parents, foundationally, we always know that our parents love us. And even when we disagree with them, we know we've had that privilege of never having to call into question the love of our parents. But when you don't always have that confirmation of the love that you're receiving from your family, deciding to do something that is outside of the framework in terms of how your parents might approach something or how your family might value your family might hold, that tension can be very, very difficult to navigate. And I think the best, like if you value your family, you lean into that tension. So there isn't any confusion in terms of why you're deciding to do the thing that you're doing.
I agree totally. All right. It's getting wind down time. It's time to wind it down. I want to open the floor for you to let us know, one, how to support you. Do you feel supported like in every day? Like, do you feel like folk got your back out here? Like you're not, do you feel supported?
I do feel supported. Since I started the Juror Project as my passion project, the amount of people who have volunteered to help me do this passion project of mine, the ways, I don't know how people learn about the Juror Project, but it's really encouraging for me to get random solicitations through the website to say, hey, this is an issue that we're working on and you popped up. I mean, I just randomly got called to give some commentary on Al Jazeera. And I'm like, oh shit, this is great. And I asked them, I said, hey, how did you hear about me? And they never let me know. So, I definitely do feel supported. It feels great to get this recognition in terms of how I saw a problem and try to create at least a conversation about what a solution can look like. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, I chose to be a public defender in Louisiana because it's the prison capital of the world. Simply put, we're locking up too many Black people. I'm still so interested and dedicated to this work because I have learned not only through the course of my practice as a trial attorney and as a public defender, but even in continual reading and learning and understanding the structural violence, the structural racism, and the systemic problems that are creating the issues that we're trying to deal with today, that I know that if I'm not doing something, I'm doing nothing, and I can't just sit idly by and allow these injustices to continue to take place.
Heard. All right, so that we are not sitting idly by, but instead are actively supporting you with some sort of action. Tell us where we can find you, what you have coming up next, how we can support you, where donations can be given, all of that.
So I think the most social, the social media that I'm probably most active on, although I'm trying to be more active, is Instagram. So the handle is @Juror Project. You can certainly follow us there and engage in conversations about jury service.
Oh, I did it wrong. Is it the Juror Project or Juror Project?
The handle is just @Juror Project.
Oh, my bad, guys. I gave you the wrong one. I added a the. That's not there. You should have corrected me. I spelled it and everything. All right, Juror Project. Gonna have me just sitting here being wrong and loud. All right, I fixed it.
I didn't say accuracy is important at that point because I didn't want to do that. I'm just messing.
Don't do me. Don't do me.
I know. So
I'm not one of those. Look, I'm not one of those friends that won't catch feelings. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm listening. I fixed it.
Thank you. The website is thejurorproject.org, and I think the way that I would love support is if you are part of a neighborhood association, if you are part of a sorority or a fraternity, or if you are part of some type of community gathering where you occasionally talk about the criminal legal system and this notion of justice, I would love to give a presentation to your community gathering to talk about jury service and the importance of why we should be reconsidering the value and the access to power that we have for the jury box. And then if people are inclined to donate to the Juror Project, if you go to our website, the top right corner does have a donate button, and we are a 501c3, so it will be a tax-deductible donation.
So you heard that. Call them, bring them out, let them inform you and your neighbors. Create the platforms for folks to know how we can better serve each other by serving and by helping to diversify juries, but also just to learn how to have these conversations inside of our communities because they're not being had enough. So it has been another Tribe Talking on a Tuesday with Maryam, and this time with my guest, Mr. Will Snowden. We thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your questions. And if you, like I said, I just changed and corrected, it is not the Juror Project. It's @Juror Project. And the website is thejurorproject.org. So connect, figure out how to get involved, and bye-bye. See you next week.
All right.
Bye.